One of the most creative monsters in the Monster Manual has always been the elementals, in my opinion at least. And it looks like they've made some changes. For good or for bad, well, let's find out.
We have a lot of creatures who are elemental. A lot of things can be touched by the elemental planes, or they can be coming from there. Can you tell me a little bit about elementals in D&D?
So elementals are associated with not only the 4 elemental planes, but also the planes of existence that are in between those planes. All of those planes collectively are called the inner planes, as opposed to the outer planes that are about, gods and devils and angels and demons. The inner planes are all about the fundamental building blocks of the multiverse, and specifically the material plane. And within those planes, you have monsters that are either made of the very element that is at the heart of one of those planes, or is at least in some way suffused by it. And so in this category, you will find creatures like the fire elemental, which is just sapient fire. But you also find, the different types of genies. Here, we also have, mephits, the water weird, the strange Zorn, Galebdur.
Genies being elementals has never really made sense to me personally. They've always felt more like Fae, all the way down to, tricking people with wishes, right? From their very lore, as far as I'm concerned, they fit better in the Fae category than elementals. But there are some certain genies that are, made of an element. So yeah, those ones make sense. But I guess they don't really fit in the Fae category either. I don't know. I guess teach their own.
And then we also, among the returning elementals, we also have some creatures who used to be in another creature category who have now been recategorized in what we feel is the category they always belonged in.
Their feelings are incorrect. They're entitled to their feelings. Feelings can be incorrect. I wish they had ignored those feelings with a handful of monsters already.
In, and that is the elemental category.
Right.
We specifically were on the lookout for sort of humanoid-like elemental folk. In the 2014 Monster Manual, we had the Azer for fire.
Sure.
They're the folk with these fiery beards, if they don't have a beard, otherwise fiery hair.
They absolutely.
But we're like, all right, but who are our air folk, our earth folk, and our water folk? And we realized they were already in the Monster Manual, but just in a different category. So it was very easy for us to recategorize merfolk, for instance, as elementals.
I'm sorry, what? Hey, these people live in the water. Yeah, they're water elementals now. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? No, I mean... Look, I don't have a huge problem with it. I do, but I don't have a huge problem with it. I'm going to completely ignore the elemental category for them. I mean, if you want to put them in anything, I mean, shit. I don't know. But they're not elementals.
They were previously, and actually quite hilariously, in the humanoid category, and
because they're humanoid? I mean, once again, the humanoid shouldn't be a category of its own. That's fine. I don't care. But if humanoid's going to continue being a category, they fit better in the humanoid category than they ever will in the elemental category. Jeez. I don't know.
Simply based on the English meaning of the word humanoid, a person who has no legs and a fishtail is literally not a humanoid.
Right.
And so and again, when we use the word humanoid, we're using it as a game term, so it's okay if we defy English. But we just realized these are our water folk. And then we looked at Aarakocra, who throughout...
They fly, therefore they're air elementals. No. No, they're bird people. They're bird people. That doesn't make them air elementals.
Throughout the game's history have so often been associated with the elemental plane of air and the wind dukes. So we decided these are our air elemental folk, and then our earth elemental folk ended up being lizard folk.
What? Lizard folk. I'm sorry. Swamp people? They live in swamps. They can breathe underwater. Well, they can't breathe underwater, but they can hold their breath underwater for long periods of time. They have incredibly quick swim speeds. I'm sorry. Earth people? Do you not even look at your... They don't even look at their monsters anymore. They don't. They just... let's just throw them wherever we want. They're not even looking anymore. They don't care anymore. That's what this is telling me. I love elementals. I love elementals. I was really excited about this, and now it can only go up from here. It can only go up from here.
And that's why we now have, one of the new types of lizard folk in the book is the lizard folk geomancer. And so we now have this nice range of people you can meet even in the material plane who are deeply connected to one of the elemental planes. And we've introduced in other books other elemental folk like Genasi, who are distantly related.
The Genasi are elemental folk of all four elements. There's Earth Genasi, Air Genasi, Fire Genasi, Water Genasi. They are your elemental folk. That was the whole reason of creating the Genasi, is for elemental folk. So you didn't have to take merfolk and shoehorn them into the elementals. So you didn't have to take the lizard folk and shoehorn them into the elementals. So you didn't have to take the Aarakocra and be like, hey, everybody, screw you. They can fly. They're air elementals now, right? So you didn't have to insult the intelligence of your players. Why? I don't... My family's going to be pissed at me because I'm yelling about this at 2 o'clock in the morning because this is irritating.
In particular to
can only go
genies,
up, right? It can
but
only
also
go up
to
from
just
here.
the elemental planes in general.
But most of the creatures here you wouldn't find like running around Baldur's Gate, for example, because, they'd be out of their element.
Baldur's Gate? You mean the big city on the coast, so merfolk could absolutely be there? No. Look at a map of the Forgotten Realms before you say stupid shit.
We're starting early.
Yeah, a little early.
Starting early.
Yes.
Great.
The other option was so much worse. I was like, why should you never drink out of a fountain?
Stop the puns.
Because the water tastes weird. And you really got to look up lore on that one.
Yeah, it's true. You really, really, really do not want to drink a water weird.
Yeah. I had a weird joke about Zorn, but that's not going to make the video. I did, however, steal a Zorn once as put him on a pirate ship.
Nice.
As a metal detector, because it can't leave the pirate ship, because it's water. It can detect treasure. I'm always looking at some horrible way to manipulate life in D&D. That's not a good sign. But I love so many of these. Like Galabdur, all these creatures are so fun. Invisible Stalker is terrifying. What are some of your favorites? And we've got a new big bad, don't we?
We sure do. We have the Elemental Cataclysm.
Sounds safe.
Yes. And
Sounds
in our
obnoxious.
search for an apex monster for each group, we realized we didn't have one in the elemental category, which I think was a big gap given how iconic this category is to the game. And at first we thought, do we want to do separate apex creatures? But we didn't go in that direction, and by separate I mean like one for air, one for earth, one for fire, one for water, because we already did that actually in Monsters of the Multiverse, where we already actually have a high CR creature for each of the elements. what we realized we had not done yet was a high CR creature for all 4 of the elements, and that led to the elemental cataclysm, which is in many ways an incarnation of the elemental chaos, which is a part of the D&D cosmology where all of
It looks like a watered down Tiamat. That is 4 dragon heads on 1 body. That's what that was. What? Guys, I had such high hopes for elementals here. I thought it could only get better, and then they gave us watered down Tiamat.
the elemental planes sort of connect in this destructive, chaotic plane of existence, and the elemental cataclysm brings that destruction wherever it goes. And it does so also with some randomness, where the DM gets to roll and find out which of the elements on any given turn is going to be dominant, and, you know...
I'll take things DMs are never going to do for $200. Look, random is cool. It's a fun gimmick. I've never seen a DM do it. I very rarely do it. It's irritating. Okay? If it's one of those things where I know for a fact my party's either going to completely eviscerate this monster or otherwise be completely eviscerated no matter what I do, yeah, we'll go with random. But it's a pain in the ass. It's hard to keep track of. It's hard to follow. It's just nobody does it. It's a waste of time to just add that gimmick, especially for watered down Tiamat. I don't understand.
And then thereby unleash some kind of destructive effect, whether, you know, it's a storm or the earth suddenly trying to swallow you or something else.
One of the things I love about this monster is that it's one of these incredibly powerful, like, epic tier threats that's also chaotic neutral. There's no malice about
this.
this.
It's an elemental.
This is a disaster with as much intention as a tidal wave or a hurricane. And you'll even see in some of the narrative texts that even once it's passed, often the world is reshaped or renewed or changed in some interesting ways, which just sets the DM up for all sorts of exciting stories.
It sets the DM up for nothing, okay? The DM sets themselves up by using elementals and giving us watered down Tiamat that is just not even really going to be usable by the looks of it, by the sounds of it. I'll hold my ultimate opinion on it until I have the monster manual in hand on the 18th, right? But it's, oh my God, I don't know what, it feels like, we're almost halfway through this video, and it feels like they didn't look at the elemental lists at all, the elemental monsters at all from the previous monster manual before they decided, let's just update it, right? They've completely forgotten every monster manual in the past, every, you know, source book in the past that they've come out with, just to mess up the elementals, which, while elementals aren't used a whole lot, they are used in a creative way, in my opinion, the most creative way, because of the way you have to use them, which is why I love them so much. But now, you live in the water, you're water elemental. Water elementals, air elementals, earth elementals are gonna be all over the goddamn place now because everything's an elemental now. No, this is wrong and it's bad and I dislike it.
It's using how the campaign world's been altered by the passage of one of these titans.
This is very much a D&D natural disaster.
No,
Yes.
it's not.
Yes, and I love that you pointed that out, Wes, because so many of the big bads in this book have, you know, malevolent intention. The elemental cataclysm is definitely not one of them. It has, you know, is no more intentional than the...
Look, that art is beautiful. I'm not saying it's not, right? What I'm saying is, you cannot look at that art, then look me dead in the eyes right here in the cameras and say, that's not watered down Tiamat. You can't do it. I'll call you a goddamn liar if you do.
Wind, but the wind can knock you down. And
I would hope so. It's a wind element.
you could imagine in a realm where an elemental cataclysm appears, kingdoms uniting who might otherwise be adversaries simply to weather the destruction that this creature brings. But if the culture has a long enough view, like I could imagine an elven or dwarven culture where they know that sometimes new life springs up in the wake of an elemental cataclysm, it might, rather than trying to defeat it, you could imagine a campaign where instead they're just trying to route it a particular way. Like, let's see if we can help it destroy the right part of this region, and hopefully new life will spring up behind it.
Yeah, it's even captured in the little summary line for it, the end beginnings of ages.
This doesn't even have to be how it necessarily manifests or looks, correct?
So the art here represents a typical manifestation of the elemental cataclysm, but because it is
So typically, it looks like watered down Tiamat. But you can make it look however you want. That's what they're saying.
riotous conglomeration of air, fire, water, and earth, it absolutely could manifest in other ways. And this actually was a monster that in our art concept phases had several very different looks. I mean, there was one where it kind of just looked like a giant tornado, but with different elements swirling in it. And we eventually settled on this form where it was a bit more recognizable and actually had a silhouette and didn't just look like a weather event.
Right.
But if
the tornado with elements in it would have been a better look than watered down Tiamat. Don't get me wrong, this looks cool. This definitely looks cooler than a tornado with the elements inside it. But at least a tornado with elements inside it doesn't look like a watered down Tiamat.
If a DM wanted to, it could manifest as a weather event or some other kind of natural disaster.
And this very much speaks to like just the primordial elemental nature of dragons as well. Like that's why it has a little bit of a hint of that in that art.
There is a hint.
A hint?
Not only of dragons, but like if you look at the fiery one, there you have a hint of the phoenix.
No,
because
you
also
don't.
what we were doing here is we were actually nodding
Those are all
at
dragons.
those 4 epic creatures I alluded to that are in Monsters of the Multiverse.
Gotcha, yeah.
Because over there we have the phoenix, and we have one of these creatures for each of the elements. And if you look at these 4 heads, they actually
look like dragon
they're
heads.
cousins
Gotcha.
to those creatures over in Monsters of the Multiverse.
I've just played D&D too long, so if I see 5 heads, I assume it's Tiamat coming from me.
Told you, watered down Tiamat. Enough of this. Please move on from this abomination.
Every time.
No, this is more you can imagine if you take the 4 apex elementals from Monsters of the Multiverse.
Right.
This is them Voltroning together.
Yes.
Perfect.
Oh.
Like a good Voltron. I do love every piece of art for these elementals. I never thought I'd look at water elemental and be terrified. This is the most evil looking water elemental in the history of Dungeons and Dragons.
Well, I mean, we weren't striving for evil so much as
I don't think you're striving for anything.
It's just threatening like a storm, or like going out and finding yourselves like 4 feet into the water and a storm's coming in, just the waves are kicking up, just things are starting to feel, you're starting to feel the real power of nature and starting to feel small. But we didn't want to suggest that every water elemental looks this way or does this thing, or every fire elemental looks this way or does this thing. because you'll see so many manifestations of things that could be an earth elemental or a water elemental. So that even for each one of the basic elementals, you're going to get a little table of just suggestions for DM. Here's how you might customize this in a unique way. So like, for example, the water elemental, I think one of the entries on that one's table is like, it might be effervescent, or like the earth elemental composition. It might have like colorful mineral formations. Here's some ideas for DMs trying to describe them in exciting ways to really make your players be like, hold on, what?
I've never seen a happier Magman. That Magman is living his best life.
And again, with the theme of throughout the book of wanting to show the monsters doing their shtick.
Yeah.
Magmen, their story is often they love to just burn stuff up, and so like let's show it and show the delight that they take in burning stuff up. And I would hate to be the people in that library watching all of that stuff get burned up, especially with that Magman exploding in the background.
This was definitely a case of, where's the last place you want to see a Magman? Probably like the library. Oh no. Even the librarians here are just sort of like, man, really?
Yeah, definitely there is some FML on their face.
Yes.
The Zorn is still the weirdest one.
They are undeniably bizarre.
Because I remember these from the very beginning.
Those are cool.
They are just the goofiest. I do enjoy them just chucking diamonds into their giant maw.
Well, it's also just fantastic to see the evolution of a monster like this that goes back so long, and the original depictions of this monster have a quirky charm to them that then you can see over 50 years. All right, here's another version, here's another version.
Yeah.
And they just sort of keep leveling up in ways while also you see them more and more in their environment. So you even see with the Zorn in this book, you'll see that bizarre symmetry that they have with their three legs and their three eyes and their three arms and their mouth at the top of their bodies. And they're just going to town eating minerals, and they don't want to hurt anyone necessarily. They're neutral, but if you get in their way, or if you have some really tasty coins or whatever they're looking for, they might be coming your direction.
I'm going to disagree with you about that they don't necessarily want to hurt some people, because I do have to note that there is Zorn delicacies. This is a real table that exists. And their delicacies are parts of Galabdur, which are just friendly rock people.
Delicious rock people.
Or parts of stone golems, which, yeah, I get they're not the smartest. But
delicious stone golems.
I just see Galabdur just rolling down hills, trying to get away from Zorn. And now you're making me feel bad for stone golems.
So, and you just demonstrated why I love the tables throughout the book that provide DMs inspiration for so many of these monsters. Because even just what we talked about there, part of the intent is to give the DM inspiration in creating adventures involving some of these creatures. Because what we've done here is suggested that you might have an adventure that you're sent on because a Galabdur is like, help. All my people have been eaten by Zorn. Help! And also, I will share that people have not in this book gotten a version of the Zorn that we did design, and we ended up abandoning it. So we did a redesign of the Zorn that almost made it into the book, where we wanted to do more with the mouth on top of its head. And we had the Zorn stuffing also creatures it was attacking into its head until we realized this was going to result in every Zorn encounter that if you were to just look at it, like you're watching a movie of what was happening, it was going to look like the adventurers were wearing Zorn pants. And so we rolled that back. So again, it's depending on how you feel about this, everyone. I both apologize and also say you're welcome that we did not put Zorn pants.
No, spare Halloween Zorn pants. Just suspenders for Halloween. Because the lower half of you is Zorn. And just look, we're pulling up the art of the Gale Abdur right now. This entity does not deserve to be eaten by a Zorn. That's not fair. Gargoyles are amazing, they're terrifying, and the art of this is absolutely gorgeous.
Well, we also went the gargoyle, really wanted to, in the art, convey even more than before their malevolence.
Yeah.
Gargoyles have always been cool. They're always something that's really fun to put into a campaign, especially if you like gothic horror, because, you know, they can be in broad daylight without being in broad daylight. You know what I mean? They can pretend to be statues, you know, and that's always fun. It's a great way to ambush your players. So I love gargoyles.
Many elementals, like the Titanic one that we talked about earlier, the elemental cataclysm, are neutral. Many of them are really not troubled by, you know, the conflict between good and evil. They often have a leaning in terms of law or chaos, but there are some that drift in a good or evil direction, and gargoyles are definitely, at least the default ones, they're nasty.
Yep.
And we wanted to show that malevolence in the art, and it really shines through.
Yeah, again, you have these tables. Camouflage for a gargoyle, trying to look like a petrified victim of a basilisk or Medusa, or the rubble of a ruin or a junkyard. That gives
Or
you
a
that sense of
statue.
malevolence. Right next to it is the gelatinous cube, which may or may not have a chest or recently trapped mimic inside of it. So if you thought things were already bad inside of the gelatinous cube, now you have a mimic inside that eating you.
It's mimics all the way down.
Yeah.
It's mimics all the way down. Perfect, that's our video on element.
Look, I love elementals. I do. I will always love elementals. They're fun. You know, they're a little complicated sometimes, but they're fun. And the main reason for that complication is, like they said, they're usually incredibly neutral. There are some caveats to that, like the gargoyles, which, once again, I love the gargoyles. They're so much fun to put in. But I am so irritated by the elemental folk. Like, they just completely forgot while making this book that the Genasi exist, right? But they didn't forget because they brought them up in this damn video. So they know that the Genasi exist. The Genasi were their answer. They were their elemental folk, right? Fire Genasi, fire elemental folk. Water Genasi, water elemental folk. Air Genasi, air elemental folk. Earth Genasi, earth elemental folk. That was the whole reason for them coming into being, is to be elemental folk. I don't agree with merfolk being elemental folk. I don't agree with... I really, really don't agree with lizard folk being elemental folk, especially not earth elemental folk. They're swamp people. They're swamp monsters. They live in swamps. Water. They have really fast swim speeds. Water. They can hold their breath for a long time while underwater. Like, they're not... They don't... And they go, oh, well, we came out with some new lizard folk. Lizard folk with earth magic. Good for you. That doesn't make them earth elemental folk. You know? It's just... It's... In my opinion, they've ruined the elemental family. I'll still use elementals. If I use merfolk or lizard folk or Aarakocra or the Aesir are fine. The Aesir are fire elemental folk. That's fine. They're literally on fire. The fire genasi represent them just as well as the Aesir do. But merfolk, I will never treat as elementals. Lizard folk, I will never treat as elementals. Aarakocra, I will never treat as elementals. I just won't. Because it doesn't make sense. They did it to try and fill a spot that was already filled. And I disagree with it. And I hate every second of it. So, it was bound to happen eventually. This doesn't make me any less excited for the book, right? I'm still super excited by it. And who knows, maybe when it's in hand and I can go over it, it'll change my mind. I doubt it. But, you know, I've got an open mind. We'll see what happens. As of right now, I'm deeply disappointed by the elemental grouping in this book, which sucks because it used to be one of my favorites. So, if you disagree with me, let's have a conversation, in the comments down there, right below. I love talking to you guys, whenever you guys comment. I enjoy it. So let's have conversations. If you want more of this content, be sure to subscribe. I've got some more content on my whiteboard coming out in a couple days. So subscribe and hit the bell for that if you're interested. But as always, thanks for watching.